I was going to, I'd written in my diary, I was going to actually put some thoughts down on paper and just kind of organise my thoughts into what I would talk about today. And in actual fact, it got to last night and it still didn't happen. I had a blank piece of paper and, a situation where you could write everything and then I wrote nothing. So I've gone into this kind of metaphorically naked in terms of I haven't prepared for this. And so I'm just going to start talking, and this is the scary bit. I'll see what happens because I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth.
So that's the point, I think,
Okay.
really, is to work through something yourself.
I did have a quick read of the reflexive teaching book, again today, the Farrell book, Tom Farrell book that Steve was highlighting, and I think he's worked with.
Yeah.
Just to remind myself of what is the purpose of this group, what is the purpose of this cooperative development group. And there was examples in there about where, there was examples in there which I don't think were quite relevant to our situation because they didn't have the dynamic of not the understanders, you guys, not saying too much, not being giving too much of your own opinions. It was more about everyone giving their opinions, basically. And in that sense, I've realised that from previous situations like this, they've not been very formal. As I think I mentioned in Steve's seminar or lecture on this, my experiences of, say, in Beijing or in Saudi Arabia there, where I was in a kind of staff room of many other teachers, and everyone gave their opinions. And it was like everyone for themselves kind of thing. It was like throwing in opinions left, right and centre. Yeah, I agree with that. No, that's wrong. This is what you should do. Blah, blah, blah. It's very...
Are these examples that Tom Farrell gives?
No, I was reflecting on the examples that Tom gave and thinking that they weren't quite this dynamic. They were a bit more like the kind of general kind of feedback sessions where, rather than a purposeful session, where it's kind of structured. I mean, no, that's a little bit wrong. I think the examples he does give are where people have tried to form groups, but everyone gives their opinions within those conversations, as opposed to the example which I was talking about, where my own previous experience has not been like this, not been structured like this. It's been in situations where you how do I say it? It's kind of...
I think there are different kinds of teaching groups, aren't there? And this is just a different sort of discourse, that's all.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
However, I have experienced counselling in my life. I've been counselled many times, which means that I've been used to doing a lot of the talking while one other person listens, and I think that gives me a good basis to which to go with this. However, I think we need to keep this more on a professional basis about my profession as a teacher, English language teacher, than about too much personal stuff, which are not actually to do with the teaching. I mean, if I was going to sit down and write down what I was going to say, it was about making sure that I focused more on the purpose of this group, that it's a professional development situation, as opposed to me just talking about issues that I might have psychologically or emotionally or other things. Not that they are completely separate entities, obviously, because they all affect each other. How you feel and what you think about situations and people would undoubtedly affect your teaching. It's very difficult to separate them out. Just take a glass of water.
So you find that more helpful, just to, anyway, to...
Which bit, the
professional dialogue, professional...
Yeah, I mean, in terms of counselling, that's helped with me personally, and quite often the personal affects the professional in terms of I want to be professional. At all times I want to be professional. I kind of ooze a kind of desire to be professional in work. I mean, I'm not at work now, and I'm not going to be at work for the next year or so. I'm a student again, which is a different hat. But when I'm in any kind of work, I like to be professional. I don't like, or I'd rather say I don't like being unprofessional. And you may see that in me, even when I'm a student, I'm quite conscientious student, you know, even that I approach in a certain way. And there are different spheres, you know, public sphere, where you're professional, or private sphere, where you're less professional perhaps. And also with the counselling that I've had personally over the years, and I've had a number of sessions at different times over the year, that's because I've had issues with lack of self-confidence. You may say, what the heck, but yes, me, I have many times lacked self-confidence when I just can't speak to people at all. Especially in large groups, especially large social settings, and that could be a social event or a public professional event. And panics. More recently I've suffered from panic attacks as well, and a lot of these have been based around heading towards the classroom, where I just can't function, I just can't do my job. Earlier this year in January, I was supposed to be teaching on a Winter Explorer course down in Kent with an employer who I've worked with a number of times before, and in a situation that was very familiar to me. And 2 days after I got there, I had a sleepless night and told my line manager I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. It was only 4 weeks of intensive teaching, for, you know, like a summer school, but in winter. And I was shocked. I couldn't fathom why it was happening to me. I didn't know why it was happening to me. And to be honest, she was a bit perplexed as to what was happening, although she could see I was in need and went to see a nurse and we sorted it out. But the upshot, cut long story short, is that I didn't go back to work. I didn't teach at all on the course, and I was signed off sick for the whole of my contract. 4-week contract, signed off sick after 3 days. And that wasn't the first time it happened. It happened previously in South Korea. So much so that I was sometimes going towards, literally physically going towards work, the place of work, and I was having convulsions and panic attacks, and I was hyperventilating in the street and going numb. I couldn't feel my fingers, and I would turn up and my boss would see me and he would call the doctor, and he wouldn't know what was going on. I couldn't explain it in Korean because he spoke no English, and that was it was never been as bad as that, but that was the first and the worst. But it didn't end there. I had it again this January, and I had it again in June. I had it again this June just gone. I went to, again, the same employer, signed up for the summer school, done it before, same place, same situation, almost to a large extent the same kids, coming back for another year. And 2 or 3 days in, after the big induction, I was just overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed. I'd only come back from Saudi Arabia about 6 days before. And in retrospect, I don't think I had time to adjust to being back. So, as I said to my line manager, it seems so similar, but yet so different. And she just nodded. She just instinctively knew what I meant. The setting and the students and everything about the thing, it was also similar because I'd done it the previous 2 summers, but it was so different from what I'd just had in Saudi Arabia. Totally different.
So you're saying that it's new situations, new teaching situations, or a change that
well, it's an ongoing study of myself in terms of why do I apparently lose it in certain situations? Why am I incredibly confident and able and organised on one hand, and then on other occasions just can't do a thing? It's like black and white, totally polar reactions for me. So right now, your experience of me as students so far has probably been this version of me, but I can be the flip of that. I can be the opposite. It's almost like I've got this kind of perfectionist streak.
I would say you must have some answers to it as well. I mean,
I've thought about it a lot. And through the counselling sessions I've had just recently as well, I've tried to explore why this happens to me. Because it's happened a number of times. I just think situational response, or what I know about cognitive behaviour and situational response, is that it's inevitable that it's going to happen again. So I start bringing it up in myself. If I come up with similar situations or similar feelings than I had when it happened last time, it's going to happen again, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because, do you know what I mean? It's just, I talk it up. And even talking about it now makes me feel a bit anxious, because I'm remembering what went on. And you might be feeling a bit of that anxiety too, as I describe the feelings of, oh my God, I could be liable to that. And I don't want to, it's something I want, it's a hidden monster. I want to keep the monster in the closet, as it were, and just keep that and keep on top. So maybe a lot of my personality that you see as being kind of very vocal, very sort of organised or whatever, is because I'm running scared of this monster in the closet, this dark demon that is what happens to me in certain situations at certain times. Having said all that, I mean, I spent 5 months in Saudi Arabia with not a problem. It makes no sense.
So you think that there was something special about the Saudi situation that made it easier, or?
I don't know what it was. I think it was because I saw other people suffering more than me.
Suffering in the same way, or?
We were kind of all in it together in terms of the things that we were having to deal with, the difficulties of being in Saudi Arabia. Without going into details about the difficulties of Saudi Arabia, I think you can all have a general idea of what it might be like, and other countries like that. And because I felt it wasn't me alone suffering, it was everyone suffering, talking about it and dealing with it in a kind of group dynamic where we kind of laughed things off and shared thoughts and shared ideas and kind of reassured each other that, you know, these kids just don't want to learn, so what are you going to do? You know, it's not your fault. So there was a lot of reassuring kind of things going on in that, even in a kind of not official but a very random way, like in the taxi on the way to work or back from work or in the minibus, or even if it wasn't a formal group setting like this, we kind of shared ideas, shared thoughts, shared feelings, and so there wasn't a sense of I was isolated. I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel isolated. Whereas in January and June, I guess I probably, if I was to be honest, I wasn't the only one suffering, but I was, as far as I was aware, the only one suffering. So I before I realised I'd gone into my own space, and I compared myself, not just myself with others who were getting on and doing, you know, lovely lesson plans, you know, sticky things, everything else. Oh yes, young learners, colours, great. Living in Britain, fantastic way. Project plan all sorted. Yeah. Not only that, but the comparison with myself from previous times when I've coped admirably and made DVDs of my whole experience and sent them to the course director and got a fantastic rapport with all the students and had a wonderful time, couldn't be better, and filming a zombie movie in less than 4 days, and just everyone standing up at the end of the course show and applauding and giving a standing ovation for the efforts, and just so it was like I set my goals, my standards so high in the first year, which I kind of matched, I think, in the second year, that when I was just struggling to get going the third time around this summer, I just felt a big gap, and maybe that was it. Maybe that's what it is. But this thing of whether it's a perfectionism or what it is, I don't know. But I'm this polar person, and I think what I am looking to do, possibly bringing it back to this situation now. I know I've mixed the personal with the professional here. But it's that one affects the other, and I can't do the professional if the personal is awry. And what I'd like to be able to do, which the counselling certainly helped this summer, and what I'd like to do now is to be able to have reflective times where I don't panic, which is what I've done in the past, panic, and work through it by talking with other people and realising that A, I'm not alone, and B, I shouldn't be comparing myself with myself.
Yeah. You had the, I thought it was quite interesting what you were saying about having very high expectations of yourself, and then where in Saudi it was easier, where other people had difficulties and those were discussed openly. So the difficulty was possibly more with the students, that there was something tangible there that was outside of your control, if you like, to some extent, that made it easier. I don't know if that
there was certainly a feeling that what we were being asked to do as teachers was a difficult thing, and I'm sure we've all had experiences where we're asked or persuaded or told to teach something that isn't going to work or is a bit unrealistic with that bunch of students. Previously I've had it in China where the university just wanted them to get great IELTS scores overnight. And they did not see that that wasn't possible to go up 2 IELTS bands in the space of a month or something. They just had unrealistic expectations. We still had to go in and teach, but the expectation of the university, who have got the money off the students, was just too great. And in Saudi, I think the cultural aspects of there and the it's unfair to say laziness as a general thing, but the general attitude of the students. They're all sort of 18, 19-year-old lads. They all look like adults, but they're like kids really. And their lateness, they're just kind of the feelings that they're, you know, if they make a mistake, somebody will clear it up for them. They're not taking responsibility for their own learning and their own futures. I mean, I had a pretty decent class. So that was why I was lucky. I mean, if I'd have been given a level 3 class, and I was going through the Touchstone book and looking at basic sort of pre-int sort of level language. And I don't think I'd have coped as well, but I had a fairly good class, so I was able to run with them a bit more, do writing for academic English, paragraphing, structure, discourse markers, this kind of area. And they were a pretty good bunch as a cohort of students. And they, you know, the good ones brought up the weaker ones. So I had a good experience in that way. All the time I was listening to my colleagues who were struggling to know what to do with the students, but blaming the students all the time. Always blaming the students. I didn't hear much of teachers reflecting and going, I'm really struggling with these students, I want to do a better job. It was always, these students are a waste of time, these students, blah, blah, blah. A lot of blame culture there. There was enough people, management or whatever, the whole system, the whole country, to blame. There was enough to blame culture.
What was your feeling about that?
I was in two minds. I thought, well, they got a point, but all I hear is blame. All I hear is I can use that as an excuse why I didn't do a good job, or why the lesson didn't work. In terms of getting the kids to work, just to study, period, was a challenge. And the reason to point what you were saying, the reason why I coped and I didn't have a panic attack and why is because I felt I was doing a better than average job. I felt what I was doing was all right. I was having a decent-ish class, and they responded to my work, and I got a good rapport, and I wasn't blaming them. I deliberately wasn't blaming them. I said they were a product of the context and the environment in which they grew up in. It's funny when Richard or who was talking about context the other day, I said, well, of course context is important. You can't just go in with your pre-planned lesson and go, right, this is going to work here. And I know a lot of teachers who did. A lot of teachers who had been teaching for 10 or 20 years suffered there because they had pre-fixed ways of doing things. This works here, I'm going to try it here. And they fell flat on their face. Really good teachers who struggled because, you know, I think relate to this, because they didn't change their methodology and their approach. So all of this stuff that we've been learning hits the nail for me, because I just immediately think of the Saudi context I've been in, the China context, and previous to that the Korean Hagwon that I worked in. So context is. Oh, I remember Malcolm, beloved Malcolm McDowell. Sorry, that's the guy in the Club of Orange. Malcolm McDonald. Oh yeah, I've got a vision now of him going around bashing people. Malcolm McDonald. Sorry, I didn't say his name. I've got a vision of him saying, he reading out this thing from Stephen Bax and going, ooh, it should be put in context, should be methodology should be second place. Ouch, he went, ouch. One of Malcolmisms. And I thought, well, God, no. I mean, I read the Bax thing. I thought, no, he's got a point here. Context. I think you have to look at the context first. You can't. It's like when you do needs analysis. It's like if you didn't do a needs analysis, if you or the organisation or the educational institution didn't do a needs analysis, you could be teaching them and wasting your time. You could be wasting your time completely. You have to know what the students are there for. Are they there because their parents have told them to be there? Are they there because they are intrinsically motivated? Are they there because of some cultural factor? You've got to understand the kind of context of the learners first, and that's what I try to do, to a lesser or greater degree, in when I approach the situation I'm teaching.
You seem to be sort of defining yourself professionally here, aren't you? And kind of sort of comparing, obviously, in a sense, yourself with your community, or the teaching community as well, with particularly the Saudi Arabia one. Do you think that's quite an important part of yourself, is how you...
Do you mean in how I identify myself?
Yes,
or
yeah, I mean,
my image?
Basically, you're giving a sort of, you know, this is my belief, my core belief about how I teach. Is that right, or is it about?
I'm very keen on what I do in the classroom working, having an effect. So, I mean, I'm not just there for the money. Okay, in Saudi, people are there for the money. You know, they're not there for the, you know, the whole. Maybe they are for the experience. I don't know, but to be blunt, they're there for the money because it pays well, and. But even within that, you can still have an attitude as a teacher to want to do a good job. And I think one of the ways in which we measure whether we're doing a good job is whether stuff gets learned. And you take them wherever you find them at, you take them to the next level in the limited time you've got. And I guess that with the Saudi situation, I wanted to teach something. I felt if I could teach them anything, that would be good. I mean, they were at the point where they were doing a preparatory year before going off to university for full-time. Same university, but a different part of the university full-time programme. A few of them were that good.
In English or in Arabic?
Well, no, they all their lessons are in Arabic. That's the maths, and a lot of them are scientists, potential health professionals. But they have English classes all the time. They're running alongside.
Why did they need English?
Why would they need English? Why would they need English? Well, they're scientists and they're medics, so a lot of the medical language, that's ESP, English. They've got to understand English terminology.
Once, Phil, you said in the limited time that we have, why is your time limited there?
Because there's a syllabus which is imposed upon us, and there's exam dates, and you had a number of weeks in which to fulfil a requirement by, and it was quite prescriptive. I mean, it was a huge organisation. It's allegedly the biggest it's the biggest EFL project in the world, allegedly. I mean, just on the Male campus, of course, female campus is a whole half a city apart. Just on the Male campus, just on the English, there was 210 English teachers, just teachers, before you talk about managers. That was just for the males. So 210 English male teachers just to teach English to 4,500 male students on the campus, and then they've got other subjects as well.
So how long do these students spend time with you?
Every morning, so an hour and a half, two and a half hours every morning.
For how long?
For about a 10-week period. That's a term. 10, 11-week period.
It's just a term with you?
Well, 2 terms. I mean, I was there. I went there for 1 month, which ended up being 3 weeks in the first term, and then I went back for the whole of the second term, which lasted from the 12th of February through to 27th of June. But lessons stopped in May, so it was in total about a 14-week period with a week revision in. So maybe 13 weeks of actual teaching.
So how much of English did they come to you with?
My particular group came with a reasonable, I'd say they were kind of intermediate-ish level. Some were better, some were upper intermediate. And then about 5 or 6 of them took the IELTS exam and all of them got 5.5, or one got 6.5. And that was enough for them to be let off doing the final exam. And that was their motivation. The university said, if you get above 5 or above in an IELTS exam, which is taken separately via the British Council who came to, then you don't have to sit your final exam, which was worth 50% of your whole mark for the year. It's one exam at the end. In English, basically, just in English. So that was their motivation. So great for them, those that did. So there were 6 that did that, and 10 others in my class who were just a little below that standard, who weren't pushed forward to doing that, who kind of had to sort of get up to a kind of. It was more about them getting them to produce stuff, and I did writing mostly, and getting them to write, getting them to do homework, getting them to. Check their work and rewrite their work, just stuff they're not used to doing. So really for me, anything that I could get done in that time. But there was a syllabus which was impossible to follow, because it was just too demanding to get through the amount on the syllabus. It's the same with a lot of institutions. They put down this top-down syllabus, which is impractical when you actually get to the classroom, and hasn't got much real thought process in it, and they haven't even got core textbooks or anything.
This is true for China as well.
China.
Because there seems to be a bit of a theme going on here that
Mm.
where you feel you've got unrealistic expectations, you don't feel the same pressure to jump to that bar because you know you can't, and so therefore you've got maybe more freedom to do your best, which you know is good. And it just seems to be the whole thing is really about you being worried about this monster in the closet, and whether or how that's going to continue.
I understand what you're saying there, in terms of it's how I view myself in terms of the context I'm in, how other people are doing, that decides whether I go or them. When I go that way, I go that way. And when I go that way, I go that way. So it's like I can't find a happy medium. I'm somewhere up there or down there. So I have great experiences, I have dire experiences. But in turn, I guess it's something to do with that. And I'm still working it out. I'm still trying to work out. I'm trying not to say things like, it is inevitable that it will happen again. Because that's self-fulfilling prophecy, and it will happen again if I say matters like that. So I'm trying to veer along the lines of not panicking, staying positive, realising the wider picture, and just bloody well talking to other people, and not thinking myself internally that I'm the only one suffering. So this is an ongoing thing, and it's I am work in progress.
And are you concerned that this is going to be an issue with the MA, that you're setting high bars for yourself with the course?
Yeah, back in the summer, back in July, August, I knew I was coming. I'd had the panic attack. I was signed off for the whole summer. I had the option of going back and I chose not to. So I had a lot of time to dwell upon this course. I had a lot of time to dwell upon what had just happened, what achievements I'd had, and what failures in my head where I hadn't worked, where I hadn't managed to fulfil my contract or my role. And I had a lot of time to dwell on the reading list, a lot of time to dwell on what's. In some ways, it was a blessing in disguise. The fact that I lost out here. If I'd only had 7 weeks to get ready, that might not have been enough time. As it was, I had plenty of time, more than enough time to get ready for this course mentally. So I was ready. So when I came here day one, I was like, right, let's just do this thing. I was fired up for it. But you're right in terms of that fear, that monster about what have I done. That thing of I can't read. I'm a terrible slow reader. I've never learned a foreign language in my life. I've started to impose things like, oh, there's going to be loads of people there who know 17 languages and have got loads of experience, and I'm going to be like, I was putting myself down and thinking, oh, I can't cope with this. I get here and it's not the case. I get here and I realise I'm okay. I get here and I realise, I fit myself in there. And I'm not the one with the most experience, and I'm not the one with the least experience. And I'm happy. I've come in and I immediately feel, in the first 3 weeks, I'm in a good place, and I'm learning stuff, and I'm able to write stuff, and I don't feel like I'm going to panic. Sometimes I feel that just so much happens that I'm kind of tripping over myself with excitement about what I'm learning and what I'm doing, and sometimes Sometimes there isn't somebody to go, right, Phil, just come back a bit, just whoa a bit, horsey. Sometimes I have to do that to myself. So sometimes I have to deliberately just take myself off and just calm myself down, because I know I'm tripping over myself with excitement. And sometimes I feel I'm annoying people. Sometimes I feel I'm just, Phil, you won't shut up. He's all this, he's all that. So sometimes I feel that people are getting sick of me or something, So I have to kind of reel myself in, but then I realise, okay, I think that's okay, so that's not a problem. Okay, carry on. That's before. So yeah.
No, I was
Go on.
going to ask if you would say that you have maybe a tendency to overthink things or think a lot about every decision, give great attention to detail and plan out everything.
Guilty as charged. That's me. I'm not going to suddenly change character. That's me. I just got to learn to live with that. That's part of my DNA. I think we've about half an hour, so I think this might be a good time to stop. I think, because it's a bit hard. I feel like it's like, Offloaded. So we'll call a halt there if you want. I don't know what the next stage is or whether we do anything now or what. Okay, we'll stop there. Yeah. Okay.